Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Your co-host, Rich Gear, here as well. And Doug, you're going to be talking about a place that I'm familiar with, but I didn't go on a trip up in Fayette, Michigan.
Right.
And there's some neat stuff up there to talk about as far as creationary stuff, but you had some adventures and some neat things. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on? Who all went up there, by the way?
Okay, it was Larry and Dave from our group, and Dan Jansen, and he had brought three young people with him, two of his daughters, and then a foreign exchange student from Germany, who was actually Vietnamese. So
that's an interesting.
We had an interesting time with them.
Yeah.
And then Ted and Inga Johnson and my wife went up, and so we had 10 of us staying at the Modern Lodge at Fayette at State Park. And
so where did you go first after you got into the thing? Did you go to Fayette first, or did you go to other places?
We went to stay the night at Fayette, and we got up there about late afternoon, and so we got a little chance to tour the ghost town there.
Yeah, what it is, it's an old mining town.
Mm-hmm.
It was a smelting town. They used to make iron ingots when they're during the iron really mining heyday back in the 1880s or so is when it was. And I know this because I do stuff for, it's one of the field sites for the State Historical Museum complex, and I get to do artwork for them, and we're getting ready to do some more stuff. We haven't done. Really, Fayette needs a little bit. It needs some work. It's a really neat place. It's on a great area up there, and the Menominee Range in that area. But it needs a little bit. It's going to need some refurbishing. We haven't really done much up there, but we're getting. There's overtures now about doing some new stuff up there again. You know.
Well, I was really impressed with the park. You know, I thought it was a whole lot more than I expected, and especially the Modern Lodge we stayed in. It was a regular 3-bedroom house. We could stay 10 people in it, and with all the people that we had there, we managed to do quite well. Beyond that, it was just a whole lot of fun to be in this particular area. The first thing that greeted us when we got to the contact station was 3 deer. They were just sitting there there in the middle of the road and looking at us, and so we got a chance to go down to the town and look around a little bit that day, and we didn't realize that the town itself is a museum. Each of the buildings of there were little museums of their own. And
each one has exhibits in there, tells you a little bit of a story up there. I mean, we have a children's exhibit. There's an opera house there. There's the place where they actually did the smelting, and there's just a lot. There's a lot to see there. About 15 years ago, they did a renovation because a lot of the structure, the roofs were gone, and so the structures themselves were deteriorating quite significantly. So they put the roof on them, and I have to tell you, I sort of mixed blessing. I think there's something romantic about seeing old ruins. In fact, I know that's the case. And it's not modern man that thinks this way. In the 1700s France, they used to make fake ruins for that very reason. There's something kind of cool about seeing broken down buildings and maybe some ivy growing through it. But that notwithstanding, it had to be done because if but then you put this like tin roof, corrugated roof, which is historically accurate for the period of time. But it didn't look quite as cool as it did before when it had the open roof with the thing going in there. But it's held up. They've shored it up. But since that time, there's been very little done. As I said, there's been a children's exhibit we put in there where they could play games and what it was like in the 1880s. Did you see that one?
We saw that, and I was actually impressed with it because it talked about the type of life the kids led during that time. Sleeping 2 or 3 in the bed and trying to make room for guests as they come in, and I saw on the wall one thing. They said "In God We Trust," and the references to the Lord and Christ, and so you could see that there was actually a spiritual life that went on in the town. And
it's one of the things I liked about doing work for the museum in the state. They have not tried to do revisionist history. I mean, look, our past is full of references to God, to Christ. It's a Christian heritage, and to their credit, they have not tried to. They haven't really kind of gone overboard trying to show everybody how it is, but they've left it intact and they do put labels on there and signs say this is the way it was, you know.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing. It was a good thing. But there's several buildings where the people live. The superintendent, the doctor. There's all kinds of places. And some of them only have the footprints of the foundation areas. They have not been restored or anything that bad. But most of those buildings are actually the original buildings. There's been some restoration because we have some other exhibits in like Walker Tavern, because it was built out of wood. Pretty much there's nothing left of it except maybe a few internal beams. The footprint, the basement, you know, is in there, and some of the rock. But most of it is not original at all because it's all rotted. But in Fayette, a lot of it was built out of stone.
Right.
And even the houses, which surprised me, there's been some refurbishing, and I better not speak out of turn, because some of that stuff was done before I actually was around. But it's held up pretty well, and I think a lot of that is original stuff as well. Even the houses that were made out of wood, you know.
Yeah, I thought the doctor's house was interesting in that up above was the living quarters, but down below was the actual doctor's office.
Yes. Yep.
And the other thing that's interesting is the harbor itself. That it's
beautiful.
One of the only snail shell type of harbors around, you know, and especially in Michigan. I don't know how many of them there are, but
I don't even know either. But Snug Harbor, you come in there, it's really nice and secluded, and the water. It's pretty good when you come in, and it's fairly calm, you know. Go out,
and then
maybe a different story, you know.
And out in the bay, there's you can see the the limestone cliffs out in the.
Yeah, you guys didn't get a chance to go up on the top of the cliff, did you?
No, we didn't.
Yeah, because you go up on the top of the cliff, it's amazing the viewpoint from there, looking down at it, and I've got some pictures of it. Maybe we'll show the people what it's like. But you can actually see the whole town from there. And going in there. But you guys went on the bluff and you went out on the beach and stuff.
Yeah, we went on the beach along the.
That's cool too. Yeah.
And it's interesting. We saw our own little version of the Archaeopteryx. So there's a dead bird, skeleton out there.
Yeah, is it going to be turned into a fossil anytime soon?
I think so. Yeah.
Probably not. You know, probably not going to happen. But.
But you can. It actually looked like the Archaeopteryx.
Did it really all twist it up? Yeah. Okay.
And then there's. But the thing that I learned about it was that those cliffs that were at Fayette are actually the same type of cliffs that were up at Pictured Rocks. And of course,
you went to Pictured Rocks, right?
Yeah, we went on the Pictured Rocks cruise, and we've been on that several times, and it's really been. It's really a worthwhile experience.
So that's limestone up there. Those are limestone cliffs up there in Pictured Rocks. Yeah. Okay.
And Pictured Rocks, the top layer is dolomite, and it's harder rock than the sandstone underneath it. And so you can see in the Pictured Rocks the inner bedding of the sandstone, where you have layers where it sort of goes like that, you know, and that's indication that it was laid down almost in a cascading motion in a rapid formation, which that's been a creationist paradigm of how that would have happened during the flood.
You know, you mentioned, we were talking earlier before we first started the show, is that we've got tertiary is on top of Cambrian is what they classify it as. And this is not a case of out of order strata, which we've talked about a lot, but it's a case of where you have tertiary is recent modern. It's basically not. You have Cambrian, which is at the beginning of everything. So what you have is a lot of missing so-called strata. You don't have
actually what you have on top is the Ice Age.
Is that what it is? So okay. Is that Pleistocene stuff?
Yeah. So it's recent. So.
Okay.
So anyway, it's sort of the overburden is of the glaciers.
Well, I know they've never found in Michigan any that I know of. Correct me if I'm wrong. People can write in or do whatever, but I don't think they've ever found any dinosaur remains in Michigan. Right. We found mammoths and mostly mastodon and some other things in the lower part. The upper, I'm not sure what they found at all. If they found
the bedrock geology of Michigan is like concentric circles.
Yeah.
You go from Lansing, which is actually right around the center, and you expand out, and as you expand out, the layers go according to evolutionary standards from recent down towards the Precambrian,
Okay.
from younger to older.
Right.
And it's because it's a basin. There's you have the bedrock, and the bedrock that we saw in Fayette and in the pictured rocks is actually a ring that goes around. It actually forms the Niagara Escarpment and goes down into Kentucky and into.
Oh, so it's a big one.
Yeah,
because you said it went out of the Wisconsin Dells. And
yeah,
it was that
Wisconsin Dells is part of that same
Wow.
formation. And so
That's huge.
That is supposed to be the Cambrian layer. Beyond that, the Porcupine Mountains and the Keweenaw Peninsula is Precambrian. And
Oh.
so those
Yeah, I guess
actually
I
are
do- yeah.
supposed to be some of the oldest rocks in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But we were talking about this in our little church service, that some of the when they date these rocks, they say, well, the age of the Earth is 4.6 billion years old.
Yeah.
Well, you can't find any rocks on the Earth that are that old, give that date. But what they used to establish that date was the moon rocks.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so this is sort of curious that they use some moon rocks to date the age of the Earth.
Yeah, I thought there was something, you mentioned this years ago, and I don't know whether this has any validity or not, but it's quite convenient that the age of the Earth, in Charles Darwin, it was a few 100,000 years old, and then it became up a few million, till like when I was growing up, it was like 300 million years old, or 320 million when I was a kid. Now it's 320 billion. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get to 3 billion. I'm sorry, 3 billion years old, and then now it's 4.6 billion. Yeah. So it keeps going up and up and up. But you made a mention of it a while back. That's interesting. The half life when you do with uranium lead, that's 4.5 billion.
Yeah,
so
the half-life of uranium-238 is really the same as.
So what they did is they rounded up the next 100,000 years to get it just slightly older than uranium turning into lead is what they're doing.
Well, I talk with some of the people who are of the RAE group, and they say that the fact that they are nearly the same is mostly coincidence.
Is really? That's bizarre.
Yeah, so they can't really. It's sort of interesting to note that.
Kind of an interesting coincidence. Yeah, I was just curious because I didn't know one way or the other. But you didn't say that you thought that necessarily what it was, but you were just noticing that it was kind of an odd thing how it's gone up to
really
4
strange.
Yeah. Anyway, so
to me, Fayette was a really interesting experience, though, to see how the people lived back then. There was one house that I was next to the superintendent's house, where they found all these different bottles of
the medicine stuff.
Medicine.
Oh yeah. There was a bunch of stuff they found in the walls, in the ground, laudanum.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what's like an opiate mixed with alcohol or something. I can't remember what exactly.
Yeah.
It was very effective though. Apparently, laudanum. You get really addicted on that stuff, But yeah, because I know I obviously I talked to the state archaeologist from time to time. He's a good guy, and he'll talk about the archaeological stuff that they've excavated over the years, and there's been a lot of it, a lot of stuff found. It's a fascinating thing on human history, and it's interesting. For the most part, we kind of know how it was, but there are some things. There's still some mysteries and some questions how certain things were laid out and done, and it's fascinating because I have to draw that stuff and I have to figure out what I'm supposed to do here.
Right.
And hopefully the information I get is descriptive enough, or there's some visual references or some kind of thing that I can build an image out of. But it's sometimes problematic,
Yeah, some of us were noticing that the Opera House was had a sharp angle on one of the corners, and it looks like we're going to have to figure out why that was.
Yeah, I could probably get you the answer for that, Doug. If you had asked me earlier, I could have asked somebody at work and find out for sure if that had a reason for it. Larry, he's a camera guy, went up there and he made an observation. It looked like it was deliberate. It didn't look like it was bad workmanship. So there must have been a reason for it. And I've probably been told it over the years, but could I tell you what it is? Mm-hmm. When you blindside me like that, give me a little time. Then I'll find the answer out for sure. But there's a reason. Probably it may have had another building attached to it. It may have been the way the cliff was arranged to do it. I'm not really sure. Or
it might have been for the acoustics.
Exactly. Could have been for acoustics. I don't know.
Because that was the opera house, and on that back wall, I guess they had all the signatures of the people who were in the plays in the.
That's
opera
serious
house.
American graffiti. Yep. Did you see any like 1880s times and names with dates on it? Did you see any of those? Didn't see. Yeah, there's some of that stuff, I suppose, but. Yeah, wherever you see a cliff or a wall, people are going to write their names on it.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I understand. I talked with a lady at the store, and I asked her about the petroglyphs that are up there, and she says they are there, but they're pretty much inaccessible. They're not in the park itself, but on state land, a little bit further south on the peninsula, and apparently. They're dangerous to get to. So
wow.
So I hope that I can find somebody who maybe took some photos of those. But
I didn't even know there were petroglyphs up there. I'll have to find out about that and see if anyone's got any reference to the petroglyphs.
Yeah, it was the park manager told me that.
Did they say where they were up the?
Yeah, that is south of the park.
South of the park
on the cliffs.
Because we don't have a lot of petroglyphs. One of our satellite museums is Sanilac, and they have, and I thought there's some there, and there's some I guess on the side of the Huron side up a little while. There's some more petroglyphs in the area, but the Sanilac is probably the most well known ones that we have. We actually have a park, and it's a big sandstone, or is it sandstone? I think it's sandstone, whatever it's made out of anyway. And it's all kinds of inscriptions. It's flat. It's a flat rock as opposed to a vertical rock, But I didn't know there was any up at Fayette, so I'll have to check. I will check on that. That's interesting. I'll ask my archaeologist guy what he knows about them, if anything.
But I was actually surprised that she knew about them because. But I don't think that they encourage people to.
No, I wouldn't think that they do. But it's interesting. So it's dangerous to get there. So then you start thinking, how did the Indians get up there?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they got. I mean, some of these places that these people did. It's pretty ingenious how they got to where they did. They either were totally reckless, or they had harnesses or things that we don't know about. Ways to get in and out or up to them. But it might not be that dangerous. Maybe it's climbable, but if you misstep, you can really hurt yourself.
Right.
Badly,
I think they don't want people to be underneath the cliff or falling rock and.
Yeah, I don't blame them for that, but. I'd like to find out about that more myself. Maybe next time if I get a trip up there, I'll inquire about those a little more.
Yeah, it wouldn't put you past you to go climb.
No, I wouldn't put it past me either. So, Doug, talk about the way these the cliffs and you got this whole basin thing. Is this during? Would you think? I mean, of course, I'm asking a postulate. So, we're not going to hold you to. Mm-hmm. We're not going to write it in stone. But do you think this is flood rock, post flood action?
Well, I think it's all flood rock because it looks like it's buried rapidly. The characteristic things we see was interbedding sandstone as a telltale sign.
In its huge area we're talking about.
And the layers are flat. It's you can see lines where it would go. You'd have one wave of tidal action, another wave of tidal action going the opposite way, and you would have a little time to maybe dry in the middle.
See, people have to understand, we're talking about flood action. We're not talking about something you see on a sandy beach, a little bit of tidal. We're talking monumental amounts of sediment, because when that water would have gone off the land, the pressure was so heavy it lithified this stuff. Right? This is rock. Now, some of the stuff we've been to, like in Smoky Mountains and other places, Doug, the underneath rock is softer than the top rock, which is always amazing when I see that. Down at Biloxi, the same thing.
And Monument Valley is the same deal.
The top rock is harder than the one stuff underneath it. That always fascinates me how that could happen. Based on millions of year scenario, I can't even fathom it.
But that's the reason why you have the cliffs is because Niagara Falls is the same way.
Gets undercut sometimes.
It's undercut, and so the hard rock drops as a soft rock underneath it.
Yeah.
Gets cut away.
Over time, yeah.
And it was interesting that at Pictured Rocks, they were showing, there was actually a photograph that somebody took a couple years ago where they actually captured the rock fall. And
oh, really?
All these, all this water shooting out way off in the distance.
That would have been awesome to see as long as you weren't too close. Yeah.
So that was really neat to see.
Well, that's what they always get me, Doug. We've been to quite a few places, like over in Arches National Park. There's this one big. What's the one real long span? What's the real long arch?
Landscape
arch. And they're trying to tell me this thing is millions of years old.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when we saw an arch. There's another one. It was up in the 40s or 50s or 60s, I know.
Right.
And now it's falling apart. It's made out of sandstone and this is out where there's not much humidity. There's wind and stuff, but this stuff does not last that long, And I'm looking at the stuff. Niagara Falls, for instance, they talk about these great ages till they realized it was uncut. Kept undercutting. They had to shore it up with cement and concrete. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, Niagara Falls probably would have collapsed.
Well, I find it really interesting, though, that each of these different layers sort of represent an age of some sort, and it's not not an age, but it's more of a deposition of certain fossils. It's an ecosystem.
Yep.
And so the evolutionists interpret that this was an age millions of years ago where it took place, whereas we would interpret that it's a burial sequence. It's a sequence where different types of organisms were buried, mostly like up at the northern Michigan, northern Lower Peninsula, where you have the Petoskey Stone area.
Yeah.
And that's mostly limestone and clams and invertebrates.
Of course, most of the fossil record are clams.
Yeah, that's correct. That's what we have to distinguish is that 95% of the fossils are clams, and the other 95% of the 5% left over is fish.
Yeah, fish
or plant life.
Fish or plants. Yeah, so you got basically half of 1% get your bigger stuff, like dinosaurs or fossilized mammals. And now that guy's pretty rare stuff. But yeah, Michigan, the fossil, Michigan, we think about that. I mean, I remember growing up, digging up, and you see the brachiopods. Mm-hmm. I'm not finding those like I used to when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. You could just dig them up. They were all over the place,
Well, I'm thinking that we can rent another one of these lodges. There's one up at Heft State Park, which is right in the fossil hunting area.
Is that right? What kind of fossils they find there?
Oh, that's the Petoskey Stone area.
Was that the Petoskey? Okay. Yeah. So how close?
Where is that? Rogers City.
I don't know where I've been.
It's on Lake Huron.
Is it?
North of Alpena.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's why I know. Okay, yeah.
It's where they have the big calcite quarry, the calcite quarry up there.
Yeah. Okay.
And Rogers City is actually a beautiful town.
I don't think I've ever been there.
Like Charlevoix in ways.
Yeah. Is it? But on the east side.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Well, Huron's interesting because it has. You think of the Huron beaches; it's all rocky. Where you get the Michigan side, it's more sandy. But you get the Upper Peninsula, like Superior, then you get a different kind of a rock. It's not all the bumpy stuff, So it's kind of fun.
I like kidding the park manager up there. I tell him that. Have you cleaned all the rocks off the beach yet?
Yeah, well, yeah, no, but did you try to swim in? Oh no, did you try to swim in Lake Superior?
No.
Okay, I've been in there twice. And it was like bathwater both times I was in it, but most of the time it's really, really cold.
Yeah, it doesn't vary much from icy to cold.
Yeah, I know, but when I was in it twice, it was like bathwater. So Pictured Rocks. Now, so do you stay? Was your home base like near the was in the lodge in Fayette? So you just traveled, took a day trip up to do that? Did you go anyplace else or do anything else when you were up there?
Well, we got so fascinated with touring the town.
It is really cool.
that we sort of had to cut out some of the other things that we had planned. The other thing we were able to see was Wagner Falls.
Oh yeah.
And Alger Falls. They're right next to each other. They're on corner of 28th and 94.
Okay. Yep.
And no, that's really some of the jewels of the state is those two different parks,
Well,
the National Lake Shore and the Fayette State Park. And I was just having a lot of good time fellowshipping with our fellow Christian friends and
Yep.
Learning about the Michigan history and some of the things that we used to. Well, they had to work carting around those 103-pound blocks of pig iron.
oh yeah, those things. Oh man. Well, that's where they came up with the idea. Where they put them in little pellets.
Mm-hmm.
Where they were able to ship them a lot better than they used to do. They had the big ingots at one time. Then they figured out the way to make them in these little pellets,
Mm-hmm.
and they were able to ship a lot more iron, a lot quicker. But yeah, the iron. I think they still do some not Fayette, of course, but they still do some iron mining. Copper's pretty much extinct. They keep trying to open up a little mine here and there, but there might be a little bit of iron. But it's not a whole lot of mining stuff going on up there anymore, Doug. But I'm glad you guys had a great time. Sounds like you guys did a lot of stuff. I'll probably be going up there. I don't know. Maybe next year I might be getting up there. So we'll see.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to do some more of that type of thing, and I hope we'll have a opportunity to do that.
Those petroglyphs do sound fascinating.
Yeah, they do. We'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution. We hope you enjoyed our time at Fayette.